ICQ Podcast episode 456. Are radio scanners still relevant? Well, hello fellow amateur radio enthusiasts, and welcome to our 456th episode of the ICQ Amateur Radio Podcast, supported by our monthly and annual subscription donors. In this episode, we join Martin M1MRB, Caryn KD2 Golf Uniform Tango, Edmund Mike 0 Mike November Golf, and Ed DD5 Lima Papa to discuss the latest amateur radio news. Myself, Colin M6BLY, rounds up the news in brief, and this episode's feature is: are radio scanners still relevant? Well, as always, we'd like to continue to thank our monthly and subscription donors for helping us pay our way and making sure that your ICQ podcast is advert free, independent, and a voice for you to discuss and engage and think about what's going on in a hobby. So we'd really like to appreciate all of our very kind supporters. If you would like to join in, there's a very easy way of doing that. If you find value from the show, turn that value into a monetary figure and visit ICQPodcast.com/donate, where all donations that are sent to us via that page go to our running costs and keeping us advert free. So we really would appreciate you considering us. Right now, we're going to join Martin, Caryn, Ed, and Edmund to discuss and generate thoughts about the latest amateur radio news, including the ARRU to consider consolidation, and Hams welcome the new Pope. As always, hope you enjoy.
Warning, warning, warning.
Hi guys. For this update, I wanted to just do a quick bit of audio, which is far easier than firing out hundreds of emails or whatever. The group that used to look after the Yaesu Fusion, the YSF talk groups or rooms, unfortunately has changed. So you registered your number with one group, and I'd registered 09480. Unfortunately, they said they were going to change over at the end of the month. They've changed over earlier, and some of you won't have been able to get into the ICQ Podcast Talk Group using Fusion. Now, that's been fixed. I managed to recreate the talk group in the new database. So basically, I would have thought the incumbent would have sent the database across to the new people. That didn't happen. We've had to recreate our database. That's now working. Now, the reason some of you might be struggling to get in nicely, PyStar does an update every day, and Andy Taylor does very well on that. Keep you up to date, give you everything new. Unfortunately, if your talk group disappears, it won't be in the list on PyStar. So, because it's had a slight name change, you will find that you may not be seeing us straight away. So you need to go in and select the talk group 9480, which is labelled up ICQ Podcast, and then you'll be back live using our talk group with the AC Fusion. So sorry about that. I didn't think it was going to happen as quick as it did. It did. PyStar obviously does updates every day, and we dropped off the database list because, Andy nicely is using the proper list. We dropped off the list. We're now back on the list, and I've tested it this morning. It's all working well. I hope this was of use for those who use the ICQ Podcast Talk Group with Yaesu Fusion. Well, hi guys, and welcome to the ICQ Podcast, episode 456, and tonight's news roundtable for that episode. Tonight, I'm joined by Caryn Eve Murray KD2GUT. Hi, Caryn.
Good evening. Hello, everyone on the roundtable, and hello to our listeners.
Yeah, good to have you. And it is a three-country episode today, so like usual. But this side of the pond, we have Mr. Edmund Spicer, M0MMG. Hi, Edmund.
Hello, Martin. Hello, everybody.
Yeah, got you, Edmund. And over there in Germany, where I'm going to spend some time with him in the next few weeks, is Mr. Ed Durrant, DD5LP.
Yeah, good evening, Martin. Yeah, not long till Friedrichshafen, but in the meantime, people listening to this, you might be still at or just going home from Dayton Hamvention. So I hope that was very successful for everybody involved. And if you are still there, remember to say thank you to the volunteers. Without that, they can't run it. So, yep, let's hope everything goes well there, because we're recording this on the Wednesday evening before. So that's also why Dan is not with us, right, Martin?
Yeah, Dan is on his way there as well to spend time at the Hamvention. So that's a good one. And it's a shame we aren't there, but needs must. We're going to Friedrichshafen this year. So that's a bonus for us. Right. First news story, and Ed, you came up with this one. It only came up about 24 hours ago. The IARU considers consolidation. What's your thoughts on this one, Ed?
Yeah, well, the title of this is IARU considers consolidation. I'll tell you in a minute why that title is perhaps not as accurate as it could be, but we'll get into it. Currently, the IARU consists of the Secretariat, which is presently based at the ARRL, and then we have Region 1 for Europe and Africa, Region 2 for the Americas, and Region 3 for Asia and Oceania. So each regional organisation controls their own region, and the national societies of the countries within that region effectively answer up to that region IARU. The target that is in the document, and I actually ask the listeners, please take a read of the actual document to see what you think. But in any case, the intention is to get rid of the regional organisation completely and just have one IARU based in Switzerland. Normal hams actually can't do anything about this, because this document, well, I won't even call it a proposal. The document can only be commented on by people from the national societies. So the RSGB, DARC, WIA, ARRL, etc. So your normal hams can't really do anything apart from contacting the National Society, and the National Society can't change this plan. This plan has actually been accepted by the IARU Secretariat, and now they're asking for comments from the National Societies, although they've already decided they're going ahead with it, in my opinion, the way that it's worded. I would point out a bit of history here. Why do we have 3 regions within the IARU? Quite simply because the ITU, which is controlled by the United Nations, also has 3 regions. Region 1, Region 2 and Region 3, and they fit exactly what IARU was set up to do. So that means that if somebody in Australia has an issue in a national society, it's brought up some kind of radio interference or whatever that has to be raised, they will go to the Region 3 IARU. The Region 3 IARU talk directly with the ITU Region 3. And similarly, Region 1 to Region 1, Region 2 to Region 2, so that the structure is the same. The ITU is not changing its structure. If the IARU changed their structure and they're saying, we have just one office now in Switzerland and you have to do everything through that, I wonder who's going to get the most attention for that little problem in Thailand, for example, or in South Africa or wherever. It doesn't make sense to me. In my opinion, this is a very bad idea. There may be cost efficiencies. There may be reduction in staff. But the problem I foresee with this is that the normal ham, at the end of the day, will get less representation up into the ITU and into the WRC conferences, etc. That's my opinion. That's my reading of the document. As I said, please, listeners, read it through yourself and see what you think. It would be rather shutting the door after the horse has bolted, but I think this does need discussion among the ham community, and the changing of the structure like this, with basically to the normal ham very little notice, even though they've been planning it since 2019, I believe. Yeah, it just doesn't feel right to me. So please read, please contact your National Society, whether you're a member of that National Society or not. Because at the end of the day, national societies are supposed to represent all amateurs in their country. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, interesting statements there, Ed. I mean, I kind of, when I first spotted this, and we were talking about it earlier, I thought consolidation into one big unit, it seemed instead of having three separate units, one would maybe be more powerful, but you don't believe so. I think that a lot of these organisations were set up when pre-internet. And what I mean by pre-internet is, you'd send a mail and it would go through the post and it would take days and then something would come back. Today, everybody's online. Things happen far quicker. Do we need three head offices effectively? I don't know. And I'm probably being a bit round the houses. Caryn, what's your thoughts?
Well, I think first of all, Ed, you covered a lot of history and made some excellent points. I want to offer generic perspective, and that is from from the one country, well, not the one country, but the main country in the world that is experiencing, shall we say, consolidation among government agencies. We have a lot of quote unquote streamlining going on, and a lot of people are going bye bye because they're no longer needed because of reorganization and the like. The hazard with a move like this, at least from my perspective, is that you are left with an organization that is supposed to perform the functions that the three discrete organizations, the three discrete regions performed before, most likely with fewer people, which means you will have a greater burden placed upon individuals who remain, who have to carry out what is still needing to be done. It's like downsizing at a corporation, it's the same thing. So I question how effective, how efficient, and how responsive the resulting organization will be. I think if the intentions are good, I think if the intentions behind this are good, and I have no way of knowing, one would say, well, of course they're good, but we don't really know for sure what the biggest motivation for this is. I question whether there isn't ultimately going to be some kind of a mad scramble. I think especially in cases where you have emergency response in some countries. I know in Region 3, there are so many natural disasters, and there's so much need for communication, and many of the member organizations often send communication assistance to others within that same region because they're not as equipped in terms of infrastructure and communications within those countries. They tend to be poorer. How it's going to work for them, I don't know. This is one big question mark. Just based on what I'm seeing here in the United States, and again, this is uniquely my perspective because of what I what I see every day going on here in this country. I don't hold out great hope for the kind of responsiveness and service that will be delivered to the folks who are members of the organization. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, some interesting points. I remember a long time ago when I was working for myself, I moved a company from central London down to one of the suburbs in Surrey. And at the time, they knew that they were going to lose 90% of their staff over the first year. And they paid all sorts of extras, like we'll pay your travel costs for the first year and one thing and another. I do wonder if you're going to relocate to Switzerland. Nothing wrong with Switzerland at all. But if you're going to relocate to Switzerland, probably 99% of the people that are in the organisation won't come with you. Or if they do, they're only going to be there for a short period of time. And this is possibly where we're going to lose one hell of a lot of knowledge from within the IARU. So, yeah, consolidation on one hand is good, but when you start losing staff with knowledge, it takes a long time to build that knowledge back up, I would suggest. Edmund, what's your thoughts?
Well, I share those feelings, Martin, because Switzerland's reputation for being a cheap place to live hardly precedes it. I must confess I've not really given this an awful lot of thought, mainly because the IARU is not an organisation that I can join individually. And I suppose if before tonight you had said to me, what is the IARU? I would have probably said something like, well, it's a worldwide organisation that's divided up into 3 divisions, if that's the correct word. I hadn't appreciated before this evening that it was made up of 3 completely separate organisations. So I don't really have any strong feelings on this one. I can see where Ed is coming from. I can also see that in these economic times that consolidating what you do and eliminating duplication brings some worthwhile cost savings. And I'm also minded of my mum's old book of Aesop's Fables, where one of the morals of one of the stories is there is no point arguing with a determined person. He or she will do what she wants anyway. So with that in mind, whether this consultation will genuinely change anything or whether it is merely a symbolic box ticking exercise, I wouldn't like to say. Back to you, Martin.
Martin.
Yeah, go on, Ed.
Jump on. I just did a scan through the document. There is only one reference or 2 references to the ITU in there, which echoes the history which I mentioned. There is no statement in there saying that this plan has been even presented to the ITU. I'd love to know how they will feel about this, because, it was basically at their wish that the IARU was set up in 3 regions. So now, all of a sudden, IARU aren't there anymore, or not within the individual regions. That may be a problem. On the other side of employees, etc., everybody works online via the internet these days. So although the office will be registered in Switzerland, the people working for the IARU Central Secretariat will be based all around the world as they are today and do everything via the internet. So I don't think many of them will need to live in Switzerland. So that side of things is probably less of a problem, Martin. Back to you.
Yeah. Well, as I say, I'm old school, and when you don't get your staff together and they work remote, they become isolated and they don't necessarily go with the corporate direction. But that's another story.
And in fact, often you'll find there is an IARU Region 1 meeting at Friedrichshafen every year, because they don't meet each other apart from that. They're working remotely now.
Right. Okay. Well, as I said, I'm old school, so sorry, guys. Okay. So some interesting things. I think we will, monitor this. We'll hear more from it as time goes on. If it's already decided, there's not a lot we can do because it's only the national societies. And as Ed said, If you are very upset about this, contact your national society in your country and voice your opinion, I would suggest. Right, moving to our next news story. Weather watching satellites entering the end of life stage. Well, we're all interested in weather. As Caryn told me, when you get on the air, everybody talks about what the weather is, and this one is a little bit strange because the weather satellites may end up being turned off. What do you think, Caryn?
Well, it won't necessarily be, Martin, that they're being turned off. It's just that the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, as we call it, will no longer support the three of the satellites, 15, 18, and 19, which are part of a larger group of satellites that do the same thing as the Polar Operational Environmental Satellites. So basically, it's sort of like Microsoft no longer supporting the previous iteration of Windows. Same sort of thing. You're out of luck if something goes wrong. You're still able to use them, and if they work, great. And if they don't work, they don't work. But there's no support anymore. NOAA has taken quite a hit already. Everybody loves the weather, as you say, Martin. Everybody loves the weather. Everybody talks about the weather. Everybody watches the weather. How many hams have their own personal weather stations, right? HamSci has a project for people to have their own weather stations. We love the weather, even when the weather doesn't love us. But this, again, shrinks the resources that are available, the reliable resources that are available. NOAA, because of the cuts and reductions that I referred to previously across the board here in the U.S., has already stopped with many of its weather balloons. So this is another reduction in what will be available. Again, these satellites are not all going away, but these three are. They're being right now, shall we say, death by attrition. And if they work, enjoy them, but don't plan anything life-saving, and don't bet your health and well-being on them, is what the government is saying. I think it's really unfortunate. We need to know what is going on in the natural world. It now more than ever, because we've messed with the elements so much. We ourselves have changed a lot of the weather, and we need to know what's happening. So, hey, it's not my call to make. It's not your call to make. It's made by powers beyond us. I think it's unwise if it's made strictly for economic reasons. I think the more information we can have about what's going on up there that's going to affect us down here, we're a whole lot better off. We'll see. The death by attrition begins in the middle of June, I believe, is from there downhill for those three satellites anyway. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, understood. I wonder if there's any plans for other satellites to go up to do what they were doing. But as you say, 15, 18 and 19 are literally going to be just have the support taken away from them. Edmund, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, I'm probably being really, really slow here. It's been a long day at work, so apologies. But when we say that NOAA were previously supporting them, in what way? Because these aren't geostationary satellites that require instructions to be sent to them from the Earth periodically to keep them within their 75 kilometre by 75 kilometre box to stop them drifting out into inclined orbit. And they're also not repeaters, so they're not relying on anybody in the ground to send images up to them for them to repeat. As far as I understand it, these satellites take pictures and then transmit them down to Earth. So in what way is it possible to support those satellites anyway? They're just up there doing their thing autonomously, aren't they?
Well, from what I read, Edmund, they actually occasionally get software updates to make them do things better. Or if something stops working, they can be restarted. And if a problem occurs and one of these 3 stops, it won't be restarted because nobody will be monitoring it anymore. And as far as I understand, this is purely a cost-saving action.
Oh, okay. I told you it was a silly question, didn't I? Fair enough.
There's no silly questions, only silly answers.
And I've got plenty of those. I've never received signals on the 137 megahertz band. I haven't got a turnstile antenna, so maybe I should homebrew one whilst I've still got the chance. But I have seen images that private individuals have received from weather satellites and then uploaded to various Facebook groups. And for people who do have a quality antenna set up, the quality of the images are extremely good indeed. So given the way things are going, I'm just going to cross everything and hope that these satellites hang in there on their own for as long as possible. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, as I say, Ed made a good point. If something goes offline or something needs restarting or whatever, or software updates, they ain't going to happen. Ed, hopefully I haven't stole your thunder on this one.
No. The one good point I'd like to point out of this, I mean, they could have taken the decision and said, okay, they're going offline, we'll deorbit them, let them burn up, end of story. But they haven't done that. They've said, okay, we're not going to support them anymore. So the data might be a little bit inaccurate. It might stop working. The quality might not be very good. We're not going to fix it. But, and for that reason, don't use the data for life critical means, for anything that actually is important. So don't use them commercially is what they're really saying. But they're saying then they're leaving them running as long as they'll run for amateur weather watchers, which could be radio hams in many cases, to continue using them. And there's, is it 137 meg you mentioned, and 1.7 gigahertz for the high resolution pictures. And they're basically saying, here you are, amateurs, whether it be amateur radio or I suppose you could call this almost a shortwave listener, but for VHF, they're all yours. You're already taking the data. It's not encrypted in any way or anything. Go at it. Still use them when they die off. The point is they're reducing the workload in NOAA by reducing the number of satellites they support. But as I said, they could have taken the decision to say, okay, we'll now deorbit them. And they haven't done that. They'll say, okay, just let them go. Maybe they'll last another year, 2 years, 3 years. Who knows? Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, as you say, they could have deorbited them, or maybe these satellites don't have the ability to be deorbited. We don't know. But carry on using them as long as possible, guys, if that's what you do with the weather satellites and they're useful to you. As Ed said, carry on using them. Next news story. A university station activates to welcome the new Pope. And we was discussing this earlier. Ed, I'm going to let you go first on this one again. Would you like to go first?
Yeah, you surprised me there. I thought you were going to give it to somebody else. But yeah, the Vatican, I think most people know from amateur radio point of view, is actually a separate country within Italy. So it's got its own government, of course, led by the church. It also has a university in there, or at least one university, to teach priests and everybody related to the church, the Roman Catholic Church. And that university has its own amateur radio station with a great call sign to get if you can get it, Hotel Victor 5 Papa Uniform Lima. And they are not on the air very often. And in this particular case, they came on the air 2 days after the election of the new Pope to celebrate him being there and, to give the good news out, and to give some people who are chasing DXCC entities another entity to put into the log. So, yeah, it's just a nice thing that they said they were on. Propagation wasn't too great. They were on sideband and FT8, only running 100 watts, but they got 400 contacts in 4 hours, which isn't bad. So, yeah, special event station of a kind, although it's actually just the club call sign of the Papal University within the Vatican City in Italy. So, great that they've celebrated that, and hope Pope Leo has a long reign. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, hopefully he will have a long reign. Now, Edmund, I know you like doing special event stations. 100 watts from Italy shouldn't be too bad, depending on whether you're around at the time. So, what's your thoughts?
Absolutely. I fully understand, for obvious reasons, it wasn't possible to announce and publicise this activation well in advance, but the first I heard about it was when I was reading the notes this evening. So as far as I know, it wasn't widely advertised on the day itself even, so it's a bit of a shame that I missed it, especially as on International Marconi Day, the special event station from the Vatican that was due to be on air that day didn't appear, as a mark of respect to the late Pope Francis. And most of the Italian stations that were slated to take part didn't come on the air as well. So I'm glad they appeared, and I'm happy for the 400 people who did manage to contact them. But if they ever do come on the air again for any reason in the future, if they could do a little bit of extra publicity, that would be a very welcome addition. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, no problems at all. Well, as I say, hopefully, maybe somebody at the Vatican listens to us. Caryn, have we left you anything to say on this story?
Oh, certainly. This is such a nice story. This is a little station. It's only on the air on Saturdays. Not every Saturday, but it's on Saturdays so as not to interfere with the business of the university during the week. It's a little station. It's got a vertical antenna for 5 bands. It does 10 meters. It's got a loop for 40 meters and a 3-element Yagi for the 6-meter band. But this time around, it was operating for, as Ed said, those 4 hours, 20 meters on sideband, 17 meters FT8. Of all of those QSOs that it made, all of them were in Europe. I had no chance. If I had known about this in advance, I couldn't have worked them because that's the way it was. There were no contacts outside of Europe except for one QSO with Japan. I'm guessing that was FT8. I don't know for certain. It's a nice station, active since 1998, and usually Luca is the single activator. Very, very as active as he can be. So they were very pleased. The timing worked out as it did, and I'm sure people will enjoy getting their QSL cards. It's probably going to be a bit of a wait since it seems to be, with the exception of some guests who sometimes will come and operate. I think Luca is the main operator there. So again, a very happy activation for a very joyous occasion, I think. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, I've got Roger on that. And guys, we need to keep an eye out. If they come on the air again, I'm sure many of you would like to work them again. So just a bit of a note there, saying good one.
The day that they are on every year is the first day of the university's academic year. So you can no doubt look that up. But that's the only day where you can basically say they definitely will be on.
Okie dokie. Well, that gives us a bit of a clue, doesn't it, Ed? So that's a good one. Right, moving to our next news story. A new grant boosts the digital library of amateur radio and communications. So the ARDC, who are a charity that give donations to worthy causes in our hobby, have just donated a nice chunk, and looks like more of our documentation is going to be saved online. Caryn, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, this is great news. This is our life story as a community, isn't it? As a global community. It's newsletters, it's magazines, it's podcasts, it's newspapers, it's journals, it's everything. This is really the story of everybody listening to this podcast. And it's the story of everybody who has come before us. And hopefully will continue to be the story of everybody who comes after us. What a resource. I've used it on occasion. I love it. I think it's fabulous. I think people are contributing generously, all sorts of material that predates the internet era. Much of this money will go toward a digitization of the material. There are so many things that people can look up there, be it call books, be it the newsletter of your hometown amateur radio club when you were growing up, be it a favorite podcast. I know Hap Holly, who recently became a silent key just a couple of weeks ago. There's much of his wonderful long-running rain report in there. How good to have this preserved. I don't want to compare this to the Smithsonian Institution or the Library of Congress here in the United States. I think they're different entities, and the comparison is not fair, but it serves the same purpose. I think we are preserving our shared identity. It's the story of where we were, and it's the story of where we're going through technology. So what a great thing to have this money to carry the function ahead now, and to have this library for a few more years. Hopefully there will be a renewal after that, but we're certainly assured that these things, whatever they may be, will be preserved for others for a long time to come. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, good comments there, Caryn. And it's not only there for us to download information. If you can't find something, or you've got something specific that isn't in the library, they will take uploads. I built back in would have been early 80s, a time-based generator effectively. So it starts off with a 10 meg crystal and it divides by 10 all the way down. And I blew it up, let's be honest. And I wanted to fix it, and I couldn't find the online manual anywhere online. I mean, this is pre-internet as well. I couldn't find it anywhere online. And eventually I found my paper copy of it. So what it did was I scanned my paper copy and I uploaded it. And if anybody's got that same time-based generator, it's now online and can be found. So it's both, great to look up things. Libraries are great for research. But if they haven't got something, don't forget you can send it to them. What's your thoughts, Ed?
Yeah, very much echoing what you said there, Martin. And the other thing is, I mean, this DLARC project was actually sponsored, the launching of it was sponsored by a loan from the ARDC. And this second loan of the Amateur Radio Digital Communications charity, there's a special term for it in the US, whatever class of company it is, that they're giving a second loan, and I'm looking through the article. I can't see how much it is. I seem to think it was $20,000 but I might be wrong on that. But they've given it a second one, so they obviously realise how valuable this project that Kay is running, and he's put so much work into it. Yeah, he's not doing all the scanning himself, but he's doing all the organisation. So K6KJN deserves a shout out here, K Savets. He's done a wonderful job with this and continues to do so. And let's hope that, when the funds start to get low again, ARDC is still able to perhaps make a third donation in 5 years' time or something. And good luck to both organisations, and a great resource for all of us. Back to you, Martin.
Certainly is a great resource, as I say. Really well. Right, Caryn, I'm going to give you the next news story first, but city police stations are preparing to add amateur radio. Now, I'll let you go first on this one, Caryn.
Yeah, this is amateur radio stations that will be connected to the central police station, Barrackpore city in India. People are being trained. Now, these are civilians who are being trained to operate out of the police stations, and some of the police personnel as well will be licensed as well to get on the air. We all have heard and read about the kind of weather they have there, the kind of natural disasters, the need for police response, and the lack of reliable communications. So this is really something the time has come for. It's very well organized, and there will be outfitting each of the stations throughout. They've been trained by our our friends we hear so much about, the West Bengal Radio Club, which seems to be everywhere. I guess largely because they are everywhere. They have teams of volunteers within this club who specialize in doing this kind of training. They've had workshops, they've taught theory, they've taught hands-on building and repair, so that these stations will be kept operational and can be set up. There are going to be 26 throughout the city of Barrackpore, and there will be the police central office. And this should help with disaster response. That seems to be the main purpose for amateur radio over there. We who do our special events and do our fun contests and all other things here seem to forget how very life-saving amateur radio needs to be over there. So adding the city police stations to the chain of communication here is a far-reaching project that hopefully will be enduring. Back to you, Martin.
Yes, certainly. Well, my only hope is, as you say, it is used for emergencies and not used for a commercial, used instead of the police network. But that's me just being a stroppy radio amateur. Edmund, what's your thoughts?
Well, time for another silly question. I assume that these police stations are going to be linked by VHF, UHF 2 meters, 70 centimeters. Is the inference that these police stations don't already have communications on those frequencies already?
I don't know, mate. It's a truthful answer. I'd imagine so. All I know is many moons ago, we were doing a fox hunt in a park, and the police car turned up, and they were looking for a young lady gone missing. And we switched and covered this massive park in about 15 minutes, checked the whole park for them. And they were absolutely in awe that we'd got radios that worked better than theirs. Now, that's in the UK. That's in quite a big built-up part of the UK. But there are times when sometimes the way the system's set up doesn't always work, Edmund.
Yeah, okay. I was thinking of it from the angle of if they've already got radio systems on VHF and UHF, then the only people who should ever be transmitting on those frequencies or indeed listening to them are the police. If you start conducting emergency traffic over amateur radio frequencies, then, well, two things. The minor one could be that the frequency that you decide that you're going to congregate on could already be in use by somebody else. But the major one is presumably, and I'm not first to admit that I'm not an expert or even know anything about the licensing conditions out there, but if it's anything similar to the UK, any person, licensed or not, is allowed to listen to amateur frequencies. So presumably, if emergency traffic was being passed and people with nefarious intentions listened quite legally to the transmissions on the amateur bands, they could then use that information to their advantage. Whereas if it was on a dedicated police system, yeah, okay, they'd still be able to listen to it if it was in unencrypted FM. But presumably, if the authorities caught up with them, they could then do them under the equivalent of the Wireless Telegraphy Act. So, I mean, yes, amateur radio being used for public service, good, obviously, but I'm just rather surprised that an organisation like that, the police, would be wanting to use amateur radio when I would have thought that they would already have their own dedicated and possibly more secure frequencies available to them.
Yeah, I hear where you're coming from, mate. My suggestion is that it's probably going to be HF, and if you set your antenna up as near vertical skywave NVIS, bearing in mind you can get into all sorts of valleys and one thing and another, and that would be a way of covering a 400 to 600 mile radius. And if you had a disaster or something, people in that area could get back to, in a big area, could get back to you and get information backwards and forwards. So I would suggest HF. What's your thoughts, Ed?
Well, I think the key point is the last paragraph in the story where it says, the police commissioner told local media that adding wireless communication to the various modes used by law enforcement will be especially helpful in disaster response. That to me says adding wireless communication. They do not have wireless communication at the moment. They rely on old copper-based telephone lines. Remember, this is an area of the country where they don't have a lot of money for infrastructure. People are living on the breadline. So, this basically is saying, look, I'm almost certain, as was said before, this will be VHF, UHF, not shortwave NVIS, because it's to get around the town and the outlying areas. And, yeah, to me that says they'll normally use their telephone to communicate to other stations and to the central station. However, if they get a hurricane comes through or flooding or whatever, and the telephones are out, they have an emergency and they will then use, hopefully the people that are licensed that are on site will then use the amateur radio to get the emergency messages through. Now, coming back to what Edmund was also touching on, we don't know what the regulations are in India. It may very well be that police officers are allowed to use any equipment they wish at any time. It's a national regulator decision whether that's allowed or not. So we can't comment. Yes, in should we say, a lot more wealthy countries like the UK, Germany, the US, etc., we have regulations in place that says the amateur radio is only to be used by amateurs, except in emergencies. In India, that might not be the case. The effect, however, of all of this is that the amateur community in West Bengal state is obviously being highly respected, as they already were, because of the work they do with finding lost people, or finding the families from lost people that have been found. They've obviously already got a very good relationship with the authorities, and I think this will only add to that relationship. And as time goes on, hopefully as the region gets more wealthy, they will then probably indeed put in some more secure communication systems for the police, the fire brigade, the ambulance, etc. But as I said, the way I'm reading this at the moment, they don't have wireless communication at the moment, so this is a lot better than nothing. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, certainly is. As I say, my only concern initially was of a non-commercial nature, but then that's up to the Indian Roof Authority to deal with that and sort that one out. We don't have control of it. But I suppose if it's as poor as you're telling me, the area, then people aren't going to have scanners and be able to listen to it anyway, because they won't be buying radios in from China. I would suggest to cheap ones in from China to try and listen, because they've got more important things to spend their money on. So interesting comments on that one. Okay, last news story. A record number of licensed test takers in Bangladesh. And we're looking here at 900 participants who got their amateur radio license. Edmund, do you want to go first on this one?
Well, that's an incredible number, because if 900 people passed it, I wonder how many people sat it all together, because you'll always get some who don't pass. Congratulations to all of them, and I just hope that having gone to all the time and trouble and effort of studying for it, they will actually use it and appear on the air more than just a few times in the very near future and then disappear forever. But yeah, congratulations to all involved.
Yeah, well, these 900 people are took the test in Bangladesh. As I said at the start of our initial chat, there's a lady from Bangladesh in our local cafe down the road from me, not far from me. And we have a fair amount of banter going on. So I'm going to tell her about what's gone on in her country and watch her face just for a bit of fun. Caryn, what's your thoughts?
My thought initially was, wow, 900. But obviously, at the time the story came out, we don't know how many of them were successful in passing, but if there were 900 tests, it may take a little while to score them, I would think. I also hope they didn't run out of chairs. 900 test takers. Seriously, though, this test was a few weeks in the making. The people who administered the test, which was obviously the Bangladesh Telecommunications Regulatory Commission, had big support from the Bangladesh Vespa community, the scooter riders, those who ride the little motorcycles around, many of whom also took the test. They conducted a few weeks worth of preparatory classes. So let's hope 900 who took the test, let's hope they all passed. I'd like to think so. And as we were saying a moment ago about the police stations in West Bengal, the area is prone to natural disasters. The area has some challenges with communication. Wow, you put 900 new hams on the air. This is in the same region of the world. So certainly you're going to have much better communication, greater way to pass emergency traffic if you've got so many more hams on the air, especially well trained. Let's hope there are not too many of these disasters to challenge that, because we don't want to hear of these tragedies. But clearly 900 are responding. They want to serve the community. They want to do the right thing, and they want to become hams. So we're going to be on the lookout for the results of that test. And hopefully we can report that as soon as they're done scoring the exams, all 900 of them. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping all 900 passed. As I said 900 passed. I'm hoping they will, because I know people do put a lot of effort into this. Ed, have we left you anything to say on this?
Yeah, just to come back and make sure everybody understands, it was 900 that sat the exam. And as Caryn has said, we don't know how many have passed as yet. And I guess the support from the scooter riders was to ferry people in. So my feeling is they may have been doing this in like 2-hour blocks and ferrying in, I don't know, 300 people at a time or 200 people at a time, and then taking them back home and picking somebody else up, etc. So the logistics of this is mind-blowing. I wonder how many of the people attending the amateur radio licensing did it not to get particularly on the air, but to get a qualification to get into the radio industry within Bangladesh and possibly also for the army, etc. So I don't know that, but it would make a lot of sense because it gives you the basis of electronics, basis of radio. It gives you a skill, and if this was all being done for a low price or even free, then young people would probably look at it and go, hey, this will get me a better job. And yeah, all power to their elbows. I mean, when Caryn sent this story through to me about a week ago, I went, wow, as well. And I went, is this a world record for the most people to sit an amateur radio exam within a day? And I don't think they all, because of the possible lack of seats, okay, they could do it at a university, I suppose. So there they would definitely have enough. But I suspect it was done in shifts. But I don't have that written down, but that's my feeling, because that's why the transport was supplied then by the local Vespa club. But great, absolutely great. And we should be aware that the amateur radio qualification, yes, we like people to get on the air and all the rest of it, but it's also a very good basic training into electrics, electronics, radio, even a bit of geography in some ways. So I'm wondering, of this 900, there might be half of them never intend to get on the air. But even if half of them, 450, get on the air, that's going to be a big influx into the amateur radio community in Bangladesh, which can't be a bad thing. Back to you, Martin.
No, it can't be a bad thing. And the good thing is, all knowledge is good knowledge. And you'd be surprised over the years where I've pulled all sorts of things out of my knowledge to fix something or understand what's going on or whatever. So I congratulate all of them for having a go, and I hope pretty much all of them passed. So that's a good one. Right, that concludes our news stories. Let's find out what the guys have been up to since the last time we spoke. And we always go ladies first, Caryn. So what have you been up to?
Okay, what have I been up to? I've been bonding with my new acquisition. I didn't settle actually, I selected for my new portable hiking radio, the Elecraft KX2, a beautiful, lightweight rig. It's unbelievable. I cannot say enough about it. People are listening to this and have the KX2 or actually any Elecraft. I'm sure you're nodding your head. Paired with a Pactena random wire, 29 feet, and that is on a POTA 33 mast, so it's deployed as a sloper. Fabulous performance. Now, let me jump ahead and say I love my Yaesu 891. It is not going into retirement. And I'm not a collector of rigs. Unlike most hams, I don't buy a lot. I only buy what I need. And the reason I needed this is I felt that I was tethered to park benches or to parking lots. with the 891. I just felt like if I wanted to take off and go into the woods, or for that matter, travel somewhere, drive somewhere, perhaps up into the Hudson Valley, or to visit some friends outside of the home QTH, and amateur radio was not the primary purpose for the visit, but I wanted to incorporate it. This doesn't take up much real estate. It performs. Let me tell you, that Pactena antenna is a beauty. It is a beauty. Ease of deployment, incredible receive on the KX2. I don't want this to sound like a commercial. Let's just say I'm extremely happy. I'm glad I waited. And I want to thank all of my friends, you know who you are, who advised me and patiently explained some of your experiences with all the different radios. It helped me select and make the right choice. So we're going to be operating at 10 watts most of the time. And I have the internal ATU, obviously. So I've been out doing some POTA, not a lot. Right now, of course, it is raining. We are recording this. It is a Wednesday afternoon here in New York. I would be doing Maritime Mobile if I were outside. That's how much rain we're getting. But I'm awfully happy to be doing this. Planning ahead also for being a special event operator for the 13 colonies, which will be coming up in July. Looking forward to more special events. This weekend, we have Randomgram, which again is a straight Key Century Club event for CW Ops to send crazy codes to one another. And we continue to plan for International Dog Day. And I believe, Martin, we have 2 other ops present here today for both International Dog Day and International Cat Day. So that's my life on the air. Let me send it back to you.
Yes, sounds like you've been busy, and I'm sure you'll enjoy the rig. I've never owned a Ellicraft rig, although I've had good experience from Ellicraft. I have a Ellicraft 20-watt tuner, Auto ATU, which I've used many times, and it works absolutely brilliantly. But number 2, I've got to talk to Eric many times at the Ham Fest, the owner of Ellicraft, and he is one helpful gentleman, and they come across as a very, very helpful group of people with very, very good products. And I know other members of the team, the podcast, do own Ellicraft rigs. Edmund, what have you been up to?
Well, the weekend before this podcast was released was Mills on the Air weekend. So I was at the local one, High Salvington Windmill in West Sussex, near Worthing. Martin very kindly came down and visited us, so it was great to see him. There's more information about the event on the Nunsfield House Amateur Radio Group site. For almost 30 years, it was the Denby Dale Club that coordinated it, but this year a different club has taken over, so congratulations to Stefan and Lindsay for doing such a great job organising the event this year. In the last few days, Sporadic E has begun to appear in Northern Europe. I have a friend not far from here who has a Yagi for the 4-meter band, not a particularly big Yagi, but it's horizontally polarized and rotatable. And he has mentioned that he started to work stations in Europe on FT8 on 4 meters. So if that is possible on that band, then by the time this podcast is released, if you tune around 10 meters and maybe even 6 meters, you might find that those bands are starting to open up via Sporadic E. Next thing is that the Sunday after release, which is the Sunday on the late May bank holiday weekend, the next edition of 433 Alive is taking place from midday till 3 p.m. local time. The rules are there are no rules other than having fun. Get yourself up on high ground if possible. Listen on 433.500 or a few hundred kilohertz either side of that, and you should hear people talking to people, and you'd be very welcome to join in. It's not a contest, it's just a activity for the sake of it, use it or lose it kind of thing. And I will be taking part, I'm sure, from somewhere. Exactly where I am and whether I'm in a car or whether I climb up a hill will depend in part on what the weather is doing, because if we're in the middle of a heat wave by then, or if very strong hot sunshine is predicted the whole day long, then I might lightweight out and sit in a car. But if conditions are slightly more favourable, then I might park at the bottom of a hill and walk up the top with my handheld and my little small 3-4 element Yagi, whatever it is. But other than that, I've not really been doing a lot of amateur radio, partly because for probably a month, if not more, 40 metres has not seemed to be in great shape. There has been an awful lot of deep and rapid fading, which was still in evidence for Mills on the Air last weekend. I know that if you're on other bands and modes other than SSB, then maybe you don't have that problem. But for better or for worse, 40 metres SSB is my band and mode of choice. And that band does certainly seem to have been suffering from not great propagation most of the time for at least a month, or at least on the occasions that I've switched it on. It's been like that. Maybe I've just been very unlucky, Martin.
Well, sounds like you've been busy and you may have been unlucky. I don't tend to get on HF as much as I would like, although I did the other week from the back garden, or the backyard as our Americans would say, and go from there. Ed, what have you been up to since the last time we spoke, apart from booking restaurant tables?
Yeah, well, actually, since last time we spoke is correct, because the last show I missed because I was actually in 5B2 land, Cyprus. I was there for 2 weeks. And during that first week, I got, I think, 4, possibly 5 POTA activations in. But then, unfortunately, I caught a cold from somebody on a bus tour we went on. And all of my HEMA and SOTA activations that I'd planned for the second week had to be cancelled while I concentrated on getting while I concentrated on getting better before heading back home on the flight. Because, you go to the aircraft and you're coughing and spluttering, they're not going to let you on. Especially as we flew with Ryanair. Now, the other thing about Ryanair that most people probably know about is their baggage system, or their baggage allowance, is crazy. Carry-on bags, they have this very small-sized, probably half the standard FAA-size carry-on bag. And that was what I had to use to take my radio gear over to Cyprus. So I had to pack everything, including the antenna, including the tripod to mount it on, and the radio and the batteries and the logs and everything into this small bag. And it's actually amazing how much you can cut down on radio gear when you have to. And since getting back, I've been able to simply pick up the bag and at short notice go and activate some local POTA parks and trails that I haven't been able to activate before, and just because the weather's nicer. And it's really interesting just to think what I used to carry out to all these sites as opposed to what I cut back to, and it all still works very well. So I've learnt through having to reduce size that I didn't need to be carrying that extra 10 kilos of weight that I carried around with me previously. At home, I'm working on antennas. I've actually just taken down my 6, 4 and 2 metre tri-bander beam, and its rotator and mast and everything else, despite the fact it's just the E-season starting now, because I've simply not used it for years. So it was just up there getting in the way, And so it's been taken down, and it'll probably get sold off at some hamfest somewhere. And yeah, apart from that, I've been doing some maintenance on the 40-meter horizontal loop wire antenna, and that continues to amaze me, where I have regular SSB contacts into Australia on 20 meters, early in the morning, so 8, 9 o'clock in the morning here, and really regular as anything. And if anybody had told me that a few years ago that it would be that easy, I would never have believed them. But the conditions we've got at the moment, we all should be definitely taking advantage of it, as they can only get worse. So that's my bag of bits, Martin. Back to you.
Oh, it sounds like you've been doing one hell of a lot and having fun. And when I used to go to 5B, Cyprus 5B, I used to thoroughly enjoy it. Used to probably take more stuff than I needed. So you're dead right, Ed. Surprising how little you do actually need when you travel. But that's another story. Right, what have I been up to? Well, hopefully, by the time this podcast goes out, I've been fighting a problem with the Yaesu Fusion network connecting into our talk group. At the moment, today, Yaesu Fusion is not connecting into the ICQ podcast talk group because the people that managed all of the Fusion database and logins where it was all looked up has changed. Now, the sensible thing I would have thought would have been the outgoing incumbents should have just transferred all the data over. No, they didn't. So what's happened is, if you didn't pick it up straight away, and it didn't say they weren't going to do anything to the end of the month, so I didn't do it straight away, and I've been cut off. So I've had to reactivate 09480, and hopefully by tomorrow morning it'll all come live and everything will be good again. If not, more work this weekend. I did have a chat with a guy on our talk group the other day, G5ANT, Alpha November Tango. Great call sign. He's a relatively new gentleman to the hobby. And he applied for a G5 and got it. So when he got his full license, so that was a good one. As Edmund said, I popped down to see Edmund last Sunday for Windmills on the Air. That was a great day out, and got to speak to a lot of people. Monday night at our club, Chris Howard bought another Radio Shack scanner, and it didn't work. And he only paid pennies for it, so it was. Chris and I had more fun trying to get it to work than he would have done if he hadn't bought it. And I've got to tell you, this thing's got such a complicated battery compartment. What had happened is that at some point in time, the batteries had 4 AA cells had corroded and all corroded up in there, and it just needed cleaning up. But some of the bits had corroded right the way through, and other bits needed sort of metal bending. But it was such a complicated battery compartment because when you take it off, one half of this battery compartment, the batteries come away in your hand, 2 of them, and the other 2 are in the radio, and nightmare. But that's how not to make it easy to repair. Have done some local operating from the car. Did have my microphone last Sunday. I realised that my microphone wasn't working. I had to rewire that and got it working in the car again. Not radio related as such, but I know a lot of amateurs use it. Skype has just said bye-bye to us. We mentioned that the other day. If you've got Skype and you try and spin it up, Microsoft gives you a convert to Teams system. So that's at least they're not just saying tough, it's finished, it's gone. There is a convert to Teams. And Edmund says 433 alive. Well, I'm hoping to join you, Edmund. We just need to set a location and see where we're going. So that's what I've been up to. Okay, so all that's left for me to do now is thank the guys for turning up And we'll move on to the next part of the podcast. I'd like to thank Caryn Eve Murray KD2GUT.
Good to be here as always, Martin.
Yeah, great to have you, Karen, as always, as well. I'd like to thank Mr. Edmund Spicer, M0MMG.
Thanks, Martin.
Yeah, great. And also Mr. Ed Durrant, DD5LP.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Martin. And just looking at the calendar, the next time this group will be on will be just before Friedrichshafen.
Yeah.
So we'll all be packing up, ready to set off.
Yeah, well, I do need to talk to you guys about that episode, but I'll do it nearer the time because we'll probably have to record it a day earlier because at this time of the night, both Edmund and I should be racing our way through Germany to our Airbnb. So I'll probably need to do it on the Tuesday, but we'll talk nearer the time. Okay, well, I'll say 73s to you all, and we'll move on to the next part of the podcast. 73, guys.
73, everyone.
7-3.
Keep your amateur ham radio podcast advert free by donating less than a length of coax. Visit www.ICQPodcast.com/donate now. For all the news, links and information, visit www.ICQPodcast.com.
And now it's time to have a look at the news in brief for me, Colin M6BOY. Well, if you can't make Friedrichshafen at the end of June and you're in North America, then why not take part in ARRL Field Day? And as always, the national organisation will be working away with some promotional posters to make your event a success. So if you're intending to do so on the weekend of the 28th and 29th, and you're doing their theme this year of Radio Connects, as the ARRL are going to make available for you some great resources for you to promote the show, your event, sorry. So lovely posters available as big as 11 inches by 17 inches, available as a PDF download or available to purchase in packs, so you can promote your field day event in your local community. So as I say, guys, head over to arrl.org/field day, but we'll also put that link on the ICQ podcast webpage for you, so you can check out that material that will help you promote your event and obviously make it a wonderful success. The RSGB has made available from its EMC committee some leaflets on mains wiring and earthing requirements that have been updated to reflect the latest version of Part P of the building regulations for England and Wales. Part B deals with electrical safety in domestic homes, and there's two leaflets available, a basic and an advanced version. Both are available from a website that we'll publicise for you on the ICQ podcast webpage for you. So as they guys check out those, that could be an interesting one for you. And finishing on with events, the International Women in Engineering Day is planned for the 23rd of June, and it's a day that celebrates the amazing work of women engineers across the globe. The RSGB will be working a way to promote how amateur radio is a great foundation in careers in science, technology, engineering and maths. So if your club and associations, etc., have a connection to this and want to get involved, it's a great opportunity to reach out to the RSGB's Growth Strategy Policy Group to promote everything you do and to get involved there. So that's the 23rd of June, International Women in Engineering Day. Right, then we're going to head over to our features episode, which is a feature asking, are radio scanners still relevant? As always, hope you enjoy.
And now for this episode's feature from the ICQ podcast.
Hi guys, for this episode's feature, I wanted to talk about radio scanners. And the question I got asked the other week was, are they any use in today's environment? Well, I'll let you make your own decision up in a minute. But most walkie-talkies can, or handy-talkies as you call them in the States, can scan. But they have a limited range that they can scan. Sometimes they will scan the airband, but it's unlikely and more likely that you're only going to be able to scan 2 meters and 70 centimeters. Now that might be exactly what you want, but don't limit yourself as such. I must admit as I say, having played with quite a few scanners, and I think they can be fun. I own two. One that Chris Howard gave me. He picked it up at a boot sale. He said it was very cheap. The one I looked at with him the other day was also a very cheap one. I also own a base scanner, which I must have bought before I was an amateur, back in the early 1990s, and that's still in use in the shack today. Now, you need to check what frequencies your scanner's going to do, and ideally, and don't knock me straight away for saying this, because some of these frequencies aren't amateur, but you need to be able to maybe scan the CB frequencies, see if there's people on CB. Now that, if you've got a lot of people talking on CB and they're quite a distance, that might give you a clue that 10 metres is open. Another band I scan in the shack here is 6 metres. I scan 6 metres, I scan 4 metres, and I scan the 2 metre band along with the 70 centimetre band. So that's 4 amateur bands my big scanner does. Also, I like to keep an eye on what's going on locally on the UK licence-free service, PMR 446. So I can be scanning the 446 channels to make sure that I'm getting no interference from anybody, and if anybody's local doing any work. Now, if you live outside of the UK, there's a fair chance that you might want, say, FRS for the States, or you might have a different set of frequencies in your area. Now, most of the earlier scanners and the more cost-effective scanners normally only have 3 modes of operation. You've normally got narrow FM, which you'll use for the amateur bands and most of what I've been telling you here. You'll also find wide FM, of which my base scanner will also cover the VHF FM broadcast band and allow me to listen to broadcast radio. And also you got AM. Now AM is probably used mainly for listening to the aircraft bands, and I'll come on to that in a minute. You may, if you're very lucky and you've paid quite a bit of money, you may have a scanner that will also scan single sidebands. Now, most scanners have a scan step, and you usually set the step to what you want to hear. Now, amateur 2 metre stuff is going to be 12.5k steps, 70 sems will be 25k steps, and you work the others out for the other frequencies. One of the steps that is not often found on the very older scanners that come up very cheaply is 8.33 kilohertz steps. And the reason for that is that that's predominantly only used by the aircraft band. But then not everything on the aircraft band uses that frequency step. So, interesting. So what can you listen to? Well, in the UK, and I'm giving you what the UK licence should be, in the UK you're allowed to listen to public service broadcasts, you're allowed to listen to CB, amateur radio, and PMR 446. You're not supposed to try and listen to police, fire and ambulance, and if you did, quite honestly, you wouldn't, because they're digital and usually encrypted. But you're not supposed to listen in on private conversations. Other parts of the world, and I know the States do this, I know that you can listen to police, fire, ambulance and all those sort of things. So you've got to check what you can legally listen to. Now, I say you can't legally listen to aircraft. Well, you go to any airport or the perimeter of any airport and you'll find half a dozen plane spotters hanging off the end of the runway with their scanners listening. The police drive by. I've never seen them stop anybody yet, but technically they could. So just be aware of that one. So, what scanner should you buy? Well, if you're going to buy one, I think the first thing comes in is, do you want to buy new or second hand? If you buy new, then you really need to do your homework and make sure everything fits what you need. Now, I know Chris has bought a number of handheld units, and you can pick them up quite stupidly priced at things like car boot sales, junk sales, all those sort of things, because they've kind of fallen out of favour. But I think that's really silly, because you can monitor a number of frequencies, just set one going, and you monitor a number of different amateur radio frequencies to see what's going on and whether it's worth setting your main rig up to try and contact people. So if you go the second-hand route, well, it can be quite cost-effective. Now, the different types of scanners. Usually the older scanners on the market that you can pick up very, very cheaply are analog only. So they'll do wideband FM, narrowband FM and AM. You can get scanners that will do digital modes, and that pushes the cost up quite significantly. And you can also get scanners that do trunk mode. Now, trunk radio, for those of you who have never heard of it, basically it's used in commercial repeater systems. So if you're a company and you've got a number of repeaters, you can trunk it all together so that when your radio asks for a channel, the repeater tells it which channel to go to. So if I had a license for 4 channels, one of them would be the control channel, the trunk control track channel, and when the radio calls the trunk control channel, it responds with go to this frequency or go to that frequency. So yeah, something that can be done on. I know certainly there are scanners out there that can do it, but that's not really what we're supposed to be doing. Now, the old Radio Shack, when they were still in existence, and they were called Tandy over here, produced a number of scanners. I've got 2 here, both from the 1990s, and they both work very, very well. So don't think they're rubbish. In the UK, they were sold under by a company called Tandy, and they had the Realistic name on the front of them. These are often made by Uniden. Now, Uniden's a very, very good manufacturer of scanners, so don't be put off by, it's a Radio Shack scanner or it's a Tandy scanner, because it is probably, not always, but probably a Uniden scanner. Now, with scanners, you usually have to program it by hand from the front panel. That's pretty much accepted. However, there may be some scanners on the market that you can program like we do our handy talkies. But all in all, once they're programmed up, you just leave them running, and I think you'd be very happy. Now, the last thing is, have a look online for an online manual. If your second-hand one didn't come with a manual, you certainly need to have a look online and download the online manual. There are quite a number of places you can do that on. And once you've downloaded your manual, you're up and running, and you can write all over the manual that you've downloaded, and if you've got the original, keep it pristine. So, the question is, are they any use in today's environment? Well, I think the scanner is, because when I'm sitting in the shack, I have a scanner running that scans the amateur frequencies for me to give me a chance to find out where the action is. I hope this was of use.
The ICQ Podcast. Come for a moment. Stay for an hour.
Well, everybody, I really hope you enjoyed our feature there on our radio scanner, still relevant, and it might, pique some interest for you there, or certainly question, as I say, if you have one, whether or not you should keep it or not, and certainly interested in your feedback. So let us know by the usual channels. Either go to ICQPodcast.com or via some of the social media channels, and we'll pick those up for you from there. As always, we'd like to thank our contributors to the News Roundtable: Caryn, KD2 Golf Uniform Tango, Edmund, Mike Zero, Mike November Golf, and Ed DD5 Lima Papa. Thank you for taking part in the News Roundtable. It's just a few weeks to go now until Friedrichshafen, Ham Radio Friedrichshafen, where there'll be an ICQ podcast team there this year. So I say we'll certainly look forward to meeting as many of you as possible at that event. As always, look out for the orange t-shirts, and I say you'll be able to catch us there. Now, this show wouldn't be possible without our monthly and annual subscription donors who help us pay our way, and we really do appreciate their support that they give us. If you found value from today's show, please do consider going to ICQPodcast.com/donate and just say whatever value you found in today's show, turn it into a monetary value and send it our way, and we'll put all that money towards the running costs and keeping your show advert free, independent, and I say on the air every fortnight for you. Right, well, that just about wraps up episode 456 of your ICQ Amateur Radio podcast. We look forward to catching up again in a fortnight's time, but in the meantime, continue enjoying the hobby, have some great contacts, and we'll catch you again in a fortnight's time. 73's all.